Well, I might as well just go in, yeah? So we just go for it. Well, first of all, huge welcome again to Pioneers in XR. My name is Dr. Maria Stukov. I think I'm one of the few people who can boast that I have a PhD in game development and made a game during my PhD, which was an immersive world that I did with the BBC Big Screen. And my MA was also in, some people might remember, QuickTime VR, really old little package. So I've been doing sort of immersive development since 2000 really, which is making me quite old if you then do the calculations. So Pioneers in XR is a program that both Keith Myers over here from Immersive and myself from the University of Salford, we're kind of a double act if you like, but every time we do this event we invite different people to come in and do guest sharing, and we're really proud to have Caroline White here at the helm tonight to do some of our Q&A with our speakers. And basically, we are really here to build our AV, immersive, XR, production, creative development, commercial products, games, artistic practice in Greater Manchester and beyond. We also work in collaboration with VR Manchester. Some of you probably go to VR Manchester events as well. So we work with Rob and the team there, which is Adam, Rosie, Emma, Luigi, and Mark. So we make sure that we have these events running simultaneously to just catch different audiences and different ideas, different projects, and therefore share actually in building our community, I would say. I know we're running a bit late, but I just want to say a little bit of code of conduct. We want to run a safe space here, so we would like everyone to work and speak to each other with respect and hold that as well. If there's anything untoward, please feel free to talk to us so we can address any issues that might occur. Normally we may have a safe space or a quiet space, so if at any point you feel like you need to just take yourself away from some of the information or the busyness of the event, do feel free to sit maybe with some of the couches at the back to just take that breather and come back and join us. So we most welcome you to take your time with that. So we have also a guest flyer being given.
Yes, someone wants to do a little plug, which we don't mind doing.
Yes, so it is. I haven't read this before. I think it came from Paul.
Paul Basson.
Susie's.
Oh, Susie, there we go. We got the flyer just then. Sound. How can we best use sound to access heritage? So very topical. It's a public discussion with panelists from Liverpool University, Manchester Archives, Disabled People's Archive, Vocal Eyes, and the University of York. Sampling as music heritage. So that's part of the Manchester Poetry Library event at the Manchester Metropolitan University from 3 to 6 p.m. Wednesday, 6th of December.
There are some flyers.
There's some flyers around. And who is that? Lucy? Susie, sorry, Susie, if you put your hand up if anyone wants to know more to get involved, there are some flyers. Again, more than happy to connect. There might be some great conversations coming up tonight that can feed into your event as well.
Can you hear us okay at the back?
Yeah?
Okay, good.
Projecting! So, the great thing today is that even though Keith and I put these things together, Keith is going to be one of our key speakers tonight, because today we're talking about, of course, heritage. What I really love is about how can technologies reveal a past to take us into the future. It is about how we build audiences, how we set up a system for understanding where we're going if we don't even know where we perhaps have been. So with that, I'd like to introduce Caroline White, who is the XR community builder, currently working with, this is a big one, Media City Immersive Technology Innovation Hub at Media City UK, and she's also a fundraiser producer for Darkfield. And with that, I hand over to you. Thank you.
Seen it all already. Like a sneak peek now. Well done for coming out in the rain. It was definitely a night where I was like, I'm really glad I wasn't born 200 years ago or 2,000 years ago out in this weather tonight. But it's great to see so many people here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the projects I've worked on as well, but just a little bit about me. I've worked in this kind of the tools or XR space for about 8 years, since 2016, mainly as a producer or helping projects get started. And I've seen those two. I love new things. I really like the future side of stuff. I love sci-fi, so I love being part of things that could be. And it's really interesting thinking about the past as well, because they're also things that aren't necessarily tangible, but we can imagine them. And I think that's what a lot of these tools do. So everything we're talking about tonight really I was thinking about it and I was thinking, well, they're all stories that are told through tools. So the stories might be about a human being who existed thousands of years ago. But what's really interesting about that is often the similarities about how their lives, their needs, their wants are so similar to perhaps things we're going through now. Or there might be a story about a place, or a story about something completely different, about an object or an artifact, and they're often the things we find. And the tools, of course, we're talking about, obviously human beings told stories over thousands of years orally, and that was, when you think of the timeline of stories, it was oral history for most of it, probably 90% of it. It's only since we've had reading and writing, and then we've had film and TV, and then there's been this kind of explosion in the last 10 years of, not that some of them were around a long time, in new ways of sort of capturing, recording, playing, reliving these stories from the past. So this was, a leap forwards in its day, and the tools we used took so long to build, and John, who's going to be speaking a little bit later, does some beautiful workshops around this about how people actually made stone tools years ago. I wonder if sometimes what gets lost with the stuff in today is what some of these things did to slow down our brains, and the action of actually having to make something or do something that makes us think a little bit longer. I think maybe a lot of the content we have, is it too fast? Are we just so used to supercharged stimulation that maybe we don't think about it? Any of you seen Westworld? Yeah? So even if you don't watch the whole thing, the credits are incredible at the beginning, and you see this 3D printed horse where they've made it completely out of nothing, and they build a heritage. That maybe that's the alternative vision of the future. What if we could live in a world from the past with walking, talking, sort of 3D printed robots? Is that where we're going? And obviously there's lots of sinister tales in that. And I guess the thing about the tools is they really range from, these are still tools, us talking to each other, writing, drawing, they're still tools. And they use the same principles that these newer ones do as well. So what's really interesting is when your whole lifetime that, starts to become a part of history. So I was a teenager in the rave era. I didn't really get to go to fields. I grew up in Ireland, and we just didn't really seem to have the whole radio field rave culture thing there. And this is an experience, has anybody seen this, by Darren Emerson, called In Search of Repetitive Beats? It's actually a live VR experience which takes a lot of oral histories of people who were in the rave scene in the 90s and recreates that through VR, haptics, and amazing music. And to be honest, I'm not necessarily the audience for this, but I went to see it, and I really felt euphoric. I felt like I was in a rave. I got it. It was probably the closest to being on drugs without taking drugs. And I think that's what this can do. But it's interesting as well when they also have some of the politics around what was happening at that time. If you do get to see it, I think it's travelling around the world now. It'll probably come to Manchester at some point. But it's really interesting how part of your lifetime then starts to be a piece of heritage, and you vaguely remember bits of it. But being able to really make it interesting enough or faithful enough to the people who are giving you those stories is quite a task. And the tools really shouldn't get in the way of that. They should just be enablers for those experiences to happen. And a little bit closer to home, has anybody done this experience? It's an AR story trail. So I'm based up in Media City, and this is a fantastic project about the heritage of music in Salford. So this is a company called Toaster Productions, and they had the privilege of receiving an archive from a photographer who had a huge amount of material. He'd worked with David Bowie, he'd worked with the Smiths, he'd worked with The Who and Bob Dylan, and he had all of this audio material and visual material around Salford. And what they've done is they've curated it. They've got people like Maxine Peake on board to kind of talk around some of that material as well. And they have an app you can download, and you can go on the trail around some of the buildings. So any Smiths fans? Not really, just one. So you can go to Salford Lads Club and you can hear the stories there. But they've actually done it really, really well. I've seen a lot of really bad AR apps, and who wants to walk around the streets like this? But it's just really, really well put together and really beautifully done. And it's definitely worth having a look. And I think this is a really good example of how place can be ignited with heritage, but in a really non-intrusive way. So there's a lot of audio in that as well, where you can be walking around and finding your way around and really experiencing what happened there and some of the music from those places. I work for a company called Darkfield, and they make audio experiences in shipping containers that last about 20 minutes long. They are not necessarily heritage pieces. They're generally narrative pieces they write themselves. But this is some technology they're working on, which is about space and how we could develop space that, if we were recreating a really old building or a Notre Dame cathedral, how could that space be ignited to trigger audio things happening? So it's still an R&D experiment. We're not really planning that it's ever going to be a faithful reconstruction, but maybe how this spatial audio system in place might be used to tell stories in a more abstract way. And this is called Totem. So we're working with some partners over in Canada at the moment to develop this. It's very much at the tool stage, but they often work with the stories and the tools at the same time, so that to get the right balance, really, so it's still interesting enough to do. And I work at this place, so this is really exciting. This is a new hub for anybody working in these tools in Greater Manchester. We are one of 9 projects in Greater Manchester, but one of the only one just focusing on creative industries. And we want to bring people together, basically, to innovate. So if anybody is working on any ideas or concepts, platforms or tools or anything around that, that's exactly what we want to do, is just respond to what people are looking for and build a community, just like we have tonight. But there's even more up there as well. So we're doing 2 things, really. So we'll be putting on lots of innovation labs. We've got an event next Wednesday, if any of you want to come down, which is one of our first jams. It's going to be around XR. We're going to have some headsets there. We'll also have an Unreal Engine expert there, if any of you are working in that and you want to get some advice, or if you're having any problems developing anything. And you can also meet other people. So you're more than welcome to sign up. It's completely free. We're also hoping to, these are kind of the areas we're working in, but there's loads of other stuff around the side. And what's really interesting is how people cross-pollinate as well. And you don't always know what's going to come out of things, and that's what's really interesting about getting people together. So
30 seconds.
that is me, so feel free to follow us. You can just zap this with your camera and that should take us to all of our socials. So
If it doesn't work, from wherever distance you are, you can talk to Caroline afterwards and get the details as well. And I guess we can also send things around afterwards, can't we, through the mailing list, just to reinforce that. So no problem.
Thank you.
Big hand for Caroline. Thank you.
So we have, we have.
Next one is going to be one. No problem. This you? And that's me. Go on, yeah?
Oh, I hope it's
You never know who you were in the past, though, Keith.
I'll just test the link now, just bear me a second.